So thanks very much for having me here. This morning, what I'd like to just talk to you about is how I believe that data has a disruptive power. And all of us in this organization, if we don't start thinking about this, if we don't start acting upon it right now, then there's a big danger that we ourselves will become disrupted by a new force. Because what I think is, right now, and this is a Gartner statistic, it might seem strange when we're talking about data for my first slide to be about customer experience, but I think this year, what Gartner predicts is at the end of this year, we will all look back on it and think that really it's customer experience that really drove the difference between our company and someone else's company. And why do I say that? Because I think the customer experience is becoming increasingly digital. So let me give you an example of that. I want you to look closely at this slide, and I'm going to ask you to spot the difference. So have a good look for a couple of seconds. This was taken in 2005 at the Pope's inauguration. Does anyone spot the difference? So this was taken in 2013 at virtually the same spot. It's obvious that we're living in an increasingly digital world. But the thing is, let's think about how we differentiate ourselves in that digital world. Because I think if we look at our typical journey, if you're a B2C style organization, this is a slide that you'll be familiar with. This kind of defines how you perceive your customer interacts with you. The buying journey starts maybe on the web. They'll look at social media sources like Facebook. They'll email a service agent. They'll browse your website. Maybe they'll come into store. I think this is already outdated. I think that moving forward, your touch points with your customers will become increasingly digital. And then we've got to think about in that digital age where they're not walking into our store, seeing our brand, meeting our people, how are we going to differentiate ourselves? Do we have some super technology that someone else hasn't got? Likely no. The only thing that will differentiate us against others is the experience and what drives that experience. You've also got to think about your buyer and your buyer's behavior. We're all talking about how the importance of data and how we should treasure it. But think about it from the buyer's perception as well. Their interaction with your company, they will revolutionize this journey because this journey may only ever be a digital journey into the future. And in that, let me just give you a quick example. And it's a classic one. I'm going to use Amazon as a classic one, but let me give you a background to this little story. In the UK, and I'm sure it's the same in Sweden, but in the UK, there are certain regions in the UK that have certain characteristics. And I'm from a region in the UK that's from the north of the country. And the people in the north of the country are always seen to be tight with their money. So that's a perception of what we call a Yorkshireman in the UK. And that does, in fact, often drive my buying behavior. Because 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when I used to go into a store, I would look purely on price. But now Amazon and eBay have changed my buying behavior already. I almost 100% of the time just buy digital. Now in the past, look at my Yorkshireman sort at the top right-hand corner there. I sort by price, okay? I look for the lowest price, and then I do my search. And this is a true story. Earlier in this summer, I bought a garden hose. Pretty inane thing to buy. So I thought, well, all garden hoses are the same. All garden hoses are not the same. Because when I sorted from low to high, 5 years ago, this is the one that I would have bought because it's the cheapest one. But I didn't buy that. Why didn't I buy that? Because Amazon, on this right-hand side over here, there's these little things like this. And you look at the price and you think it looks like a hose. It does what I think it will do. But then I start reading things like this. And I see, ooh, 50% of the people who've bought this product are telling me that it's a rubbish product. It's going to split. So as a Yorkshireman, it pained me to end up buying this one. So already Amazon has extracted another £6.50 from a Yorkshireman. A pretty significant achievement that Amazon's done. But how do they do that? They've got no super technology that you don't have. the thing that they do is they really leverage the data that they have. And in that digital world, an increasingly digital world, where our buyers are increasingly digital due to their generation, and I'll introduce that to you later, this is going to be increasingly important. And to take that story on, not only did I buy the hose, but now I've got Prime, and then the click after this, they told me about all these adapters that I should buy with it, and I bought all those as well, and got delivered the next day. That is a great differentiation of data. But Amazon themselves cannot rest on their laurels, because I would predict that Amazon is using technology which is actually becoming outdated itself. And if you look at technology like blockchain that's coming into our future, the increasing adoption of things like blockchain will cut out the middleman. So for me, as a Yorkshireman, I might go and leverage things on blockchain to reduce the cost and cut out the middleman. So Amazon has increasingly got to innovate themselves and increasingly got to deliver that super high-end customer experience, leveraging data, because that's what differentiates them in the marketplace. So how do we do that? Well, it's difficult. And it's difficult, especially if you're an established organization, because there are many trends going on at the moment. And one of the key trends is the movement to cloud, which you already know about. It's predicted that 90% of businesses by 2020 will be leveraging cloud. And you've got many of the leading institutions like BP, Santander, that are saying they're not going to have any physical data centers by 2020. They'll move their kit into the cloud, but essentially they won't own data centers anymore on their properties. That's a big change. But with that comes a challenge. The challenge is increasing fragmentation of your data outside of your organization when we struggled to manage it even when it was inside our organization. Added to that, 90% of companies are going to be using cloud. 92% of the workloads, the computing is going to be done in cloud, but you're still going to have data on-premise. In the UK, I deal with a number of financial institutions, just to give you an example. Some of the leading institutions we have in the UK, they have mainframes that are 60 years old and still running. And they're not planning to take them off the shelf tomorrow. They're going to continue using them and slowly migrate off when they can. So the world is not just cloud. The world for the next 5 to 10 years is hybrid. So you as organizations, you need to manage that complexity, that fragmentation. Cloud to cloud, cloud to ground, and still ground to ground as well. All those different patterns and all those different areas of data you need to pull together in order to give you a comprehensive data management capability. Then we've got a new rise, which is the rise in terms of the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things, again, will revolutionize us because think about the sheer volume of data. Every light bulb in this room, when it becomes a smart light bulb, will generate more data than I do. Their lifetime versus my lifetime, they will generate more data. A light bulb. Because they're sending data all of the time. And increasingly, it'll be more and more as we have an infrastructure to cope with that. Are you ready for that? Is your organization ready to stream all the information in? And it will affect every sector. And I have many discussions around this. Even sectors that look purely number-driven or data-driven, like financial services, increasing use of things like wearable devices, and we're working with an insurance company on integrating data from mobile phones to drive insurance policies, those types of things, where it monitors driving styles. Every industry will be affected, but the volume will be phenomenal when it comes to the IoT. Just an illustration as well, just to give you a feel for this. One jet engine on an aircraft generates more data than the entire Twitter hemisphere. That's pretty significant, and there are 4 engines on every aircraft. So you can start to see the size and the scale of it. And the reality as we move forward, I call this drinking from the data fire hose. If you're not prepared for this, then you're not leveraging all the data that will differentiate you in that digital world as we move forward. So, it was good to see the AI element in the introduction. And if you take that drinking from the data fire hose analogy, we are not prepared to receive all of this data. The organizations that are will be the organizations that differentiate themselves from others. We've got an organization who works with us, JLL. I don't know if you know JLL, Jones Lang LaSalle, as they used to be called. They manage properties. They've invested a lot in their estate in terms of putting sensors into every light bulb, every door, every heating system, every fire alarm, every security alarm. Their entire portfolio is now digital. It's significantly driven their revenues because it's lowered their cost base. They don't have failures in their business anymore, or limited failures, because they predict everything. How do they do that? Well, yes, it's AI, it's IoT sending the data, but then what is consuming the data? It's artificial intelligence that's consuming it and predicting it. And that's happening right now in our customer base like JLL. And I'll give you another example in a minute. Let me talk a little bit about what I work on internally at Informatica. Now, those of you who know us at Informatica, we're the world's leading data management company. And artificial intelligence is affecting our business. So just like IBM has Watson and Salesforce has Einstein, we have Claire, which is our artificial intelligence as part of our layer. But what we focus on is artificial intelligence for data management. Now, in the introduction, we talked about artificial intelligence consuming and being predictive in terms of the data. But what happens if the data is poor quality, badly integrated, fragmented, not complete? The artificial intelligence is no more intelligence than us if we put in front of a data set that's poor or incorrect. It's going to make a bad decision. So our efforts are all around automating all the integration of data to make sure that when you've got an AI engine that wants to make the decision on the price of a policy or what product to recommend, is making a decision based upon extremely high quality data. And our vision is to make sure that in the future, we don't have to manually integrate data anymore. We're doing it for you. We already have that on our intelligence layer. We can point our infrastructure at data in an unstructured format, and our artificial intelligence engine can already parse it and process it without the need for a human intervention anymore. How can we do that? It's experience. 23 years of experience, and a secret sauce is the metadata underneath, capturing how we do it, making that repeatable, looking for patterns. When we see customer data, we know how it's processed, and we can replicate that time and time again. This is a very brave man. This is in the press this week, if you're eagle-eyed. He's the CEO of Deutsche Bank. And I will tell you right now that we're working on robotics and AI in financial services because increasingly repetitive tasks where people are reading from scripts or following logic patterns, that can all be automated. And it will be automated. My prediction is everything that can be done by machines will be done by machines. And it will happen quickly. And it's happening now in financial services, and he recognizes that. He's competing against fintech startups that can build a business that can offer as good a financial planning advice as Deutsche Bank with no employees because they can do it all digitally. He knows that. They've got a 5-year restructuring program. They've got 100,000 employees. After the 5 years, they probably won't have 100,000 employees. And if they still do, they'll be doing different things. They won't be mortgage advisors or planning advisors anymore. They'll be doing a different job. We talked about skills as well. In the marketplace, the data is the differentiator. People think about technology, maybe infrastructure as a differentiator. This shows you the journey in big data. It's a 5-year pattern. It's looking from left to right. And 5 years ago, when I was talking to some of you guys in the audience, we'd be talking about things like MapReduce and Hadoop and Pig and Hive and all these types of technologies that you can use. Now, we're only ever talking about Kafka, Spark streaming on the right-hand side. And that journey has only been, well, in that case, 3 to 5 years for the big data side. But what it's meant to represent is that's just a view of big data. Everything is changing all of the time. Can you keep pace? And this is where automated artificial intelligence in terms of data management and obfuscating you away from all the changes. Because you don't want to have to find all these different skills. And what's next? Are you going to be able to you're going to be able to continue keeping up pace when the technology changes again and again and again and again? That's not where you should be spending your time. You need to obfuscate yourself from that. What I'm seeing right now in the big data space is there's a lot of conversations around using Spark. And there's a lot of organizations who start to build in Spark programming, for example. What I've seen in the last 6 months is people installing SQL tools on big data. And you think, whoa, that's last generation. What's happening? It's skills. People can't find the people, and the cost is too high to do it in this technology over here. So they're going back to a previous generation where the skills are there. With a flat platform and artificial intelligence like we're working on and have right now, you don't need any of these skills. You just need a platform with artificial intelligence that does it for you and executes in whatever platform you want at the click of a button. And whilst we're doing all this, by the way, we've also got to bear in mind things like GDPR. How can you maintain compliancy? That's very difficult if you're doing everything in Spark programming in SQL. Not only have we got our data fragmented, we've got all sorts of different skill sets, all sorts of black boxes and silos of code and processing and logic. How do we maintain our compliancy moving forward? It's really difficult. Simplify. Data management platform rather than doing it yourself. Security of data. I talked about data differentiating, right? It's not just the experience. My experience on Amazon or a digital mobile device. Increasingly, and I'll introduce some new buyers to you in a minute, but they're going to look at you and they're going to say, are you keeping my data secure? That is what's going to differentiate you in the future as well. And we'll look at an example later on. If you're not keeping your customer data secure and earning the right to use it, then they're going to move on. So, just to summarize the requirements, what I think you need as part of the basic data management layer right now, you're going to need that ingestion, drinking from the Firehose. Can you manage the volume of data that's going to be thrown at you? If you're not leveraging all of the data, someone else will be able to differentiate against you in this digital world because they're going to be making decisions on more data. They're going to be smarter decisions. Can you do the security and governance and data as you want to adopt your new kind of digital platforms? Have you got the resilience in the digital world to make sure that you can manage failures? Like Irma last week, the floods, I was talking to BP, one of our customers the other day, and their Houston data center is flooded right now. So they're running around trying to fix those types of issues. Can you do that as well yourself? Have you got high quality data? We've got an MDM roundtable later on in the day. We're the world leading MDM company, master data management company. Go and see the guys. Talk about high quality data. Artificial intelligence will only be successful if you give it smart data, if you give it high quality data to make decisions on. Always on, always available, data democratization, putting data out, so we're using our data scientists to make the decisions that AI cannot currently. And let's think about a management platform that has AI that's focused on data management. So we can get high quality data, we can get all of our data from all of our fragmented cloud and IoT, and we can get it to the people to the hands of people who do it. Let's look at a company is a good example of how they're doing that as well. This is representing GE Aviation, which is one of our customers here at Informatica, which they're proud of. It's a great story because it combines everything I've just talked about before: cloud, IoT, and smart data management. In one of these engines, there's 5,000 sensors. I told you already, that's how I know that they generate more data than Twitter, because in every single engine, in a flight from the US to, say, Singapore, each engine is generating more than 1 terabyte of data. And there's 4 of them. And we need to act on that data to properly service the engines. Now, here's an example of how data disrupts when you've got all that intellectual and data management platform in place. What they did is when, say, for example, British Airways buy a new airplane, they used to, as we do with a car right now, they used to buy an airplane and an engine. And the engine used to cost millions of dollars, for example. What GE did is they took a different look at the marketplace. Once they had the IoT data and the AI in place, they could predict failure. They could be a lot smarter and a lot more cost effective in terms of maintaining their engines. So what they did is they completely flipped the market. You didn't buy an engine anymore. You rented an engine. And they serviced it at service periods. The only way that they could do that is because they had the intelligence from the data, the sensors, and the management platform in order to give them the confidence that they could do that. That's what differentiated them in the marketplace. But I would say as well that one of the biggest disruptors that we're going to have, and again, it's not data, it's not a what, it's a who. And as we move into this digital economy, let me introduce you to Generation Z. Lots of you will have heard of millennials, right? Those were people who came into adulthood around the turn of the century. Generation Z, the generation after that, which was kind of born at the turn of the century, and they are different, very different from us. You can look at this, you can read it about the differences between the millennials and the Generation Z. Millennials are the most surveyed and researched generation in history. And do you know what all that research told us? They're pretty much the same as the generation before, with a few tweaks. But they were influenced by things like a poor economy, terrorism, and that's impacted how they parent Generation Z. Aspirationally, Generation Z's aspirations are extremely high, and they're mega digital. They are digital native. I was looking at this slide and I was thinking, this is actually a really poor picture. I've got 2 kids, 4 and 6. There is no way that they will be seen with this brick here sitting on that thing. It's all iPads, and those of you with young kids and a plasma screen, you've all seen them walk to the TV and swipe when they want to change the channel. That's digital native. And that research already tells us now that even when they communicate, Generation Z prefer to communicate digitally, texting, tweeting, social media. And we've all seen it around a table where they're talking to each other with their phones, not even looking at each other, making facial connections. Think about that in terms of driving that buyer behavior. It will become increasingly digital, and I would argue 100% digital. And you're going to have to deliver your product to their feet in an hour. That's the challenge that you have. And you can't do it without high-quality data in a digital data management platform. The other thing is they're not loyal. We've spent a lot of money creating loyalty programs that they will buy into. Now, millennials, 45% of them, loyalty programs drive their buying behavior. They will stick to a single vendor. Only 36% of generation do that. If they find a product that's comparable or a better price, they'll buy that. Maybe we're all turning into Yorkshiremen. I would love that. So what are you going to do to make your products more sticky and differentiate yourself? Are you leveraging your most valuable asset, as we talked about before? Data is your most prized asset. Are you valuing it? Is data a conversation that your C-level execs are having right now? It should be. GDPR is a great leverage to rise up into the C-level and make sure the conversations are happening. There's never been a better focus on data right now. But let's not think about how do we become compliant. Let's think about how we leverage it for differentiation. Let's disrupt ourselves. Invest in it. People, process. You need data management specialists, data scientists, data quality stewards to make sure that you've got that high quality data. Invest in it, protect it. Security of data is a differentiator. Believe me, I couldn't resist putting this Equifax share price thing. Anyone can guess what happened just here? Last week, 188 million personal records breached. So we need to protect it. Otherwise, you'll lose your market share rapidly. But can you exploit it? Those that exploit it are going to be the companies that succeed in the future. Because I would say, moving forward, we need to be really brave. You need to go back to your organizations and say, guys, we need to disrupt ourselves. We should be scared right now about who's coming up on our tails. These companies who are 100% digital that are going to disrupt us, the ones that I mentioned earlier on. The Amazon, the Ubers of this world, they're already being threatened with organizations using things like blockchain because it's a fundamentally different way of doing things at lower cost. Go back to your organizations and ask the questions. Are you getting C-level sponsorship? What should we change? Because if you don't change it right now, right here, right now, you can be certain that in 5 years' time, your organization could be one of the ones that goes by the wayside. Because if you don't disrupt yourself, you're going to get disrupted. If you want to know more, then please come and speak to me. I've got a couple of roundtables around the lunchtime area. I'm involved in a panel later on, and we've got a stand outside where you can talk to some of our other data management professionals as well. If you liked what I had to say, my Twitter handle's down on the left-hand side there. In this model digital era, I don't look at kind of survey results anymore. I look at how many people join me on Twitter after this. So if you liked what you heard, I look forward to seeing you on Twitter. If you don't, then I apologize. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you.